Hello and welcome to the tutorial for how to seam your sweater sleeves. I'm Liz from Apple Tree Knits. I wrote this pattern, and this tutorial will take you through how to do the actual seaming on those sleeves. I've got my two drop stitch sections that are ready to be seamed together. Now when you do this, you need to choose whether you want the stockinette stitch side to be your right side or the reverse stockinette stitch. I think both sides look beautiful personally, and I've done versions of this with the stockinette stitch on the outside and versions with the reverse stockinette stitch on the outside. It's entirely up to you. Up till this point, there is no difference between them, so this is really when you make that decision. Okay, so my other sleeve I did with the stockinette stitch on the outside is my right side, so that's what I'm going to do here. And that means I need my wrong side, my reverse stockinette stitch side, to be in the middle, to be together. So you want your right side facing, and what we need to do first is line up the bottom of the drop stitch sections on both of our drop stitch rows here. So I've got, what I find easiest to do is just put my finger through on the one side. So here's my first drop stitch section, and stick my finger through there, and that'll just kind of hold that in place for me. And if you're not sure which is the bottom, just look for where you can make a nice big hole, basically. It's not super important that you get this exactly right. You just don't want to mess up the tension or make it hard on yourself. So this clearly is not part of my drop stitch section. I can only make a little hole there. Here, oh yeah, I can make a nice big hole. So put my finger through there, and coming around to the front. All right, where's my nice big hole? I can make a nice big hole there. I can there. There we go. So you do not need to have this lined up all the way down at this point. It doesn't matter if it's lined up down here. It doesn't matter if they're lined up in here. You just need to have the very bottom of your drop stitch sections lined up front to back, so that you'll be starting from the same place on both sides. And what we want to do is basically create a ladder of stitches using all of the strands from the back side through the front. And then once we're done with that, we're going to flip it over and do kind of the same thing on the reverse side. So what they do is essentially lock the back and the front pieces of fabric together, and that's how you're going to make your sleeve. But it doesn't matter if this is lined up, it'll work itself out as you go. What we do need is a crochet hook. So the size isn't super important, but you are going to need the hook to be large enough to grab 2 strands of whatever yarn you are using. So I knit this sample in a DK weight yarn on a size 7 needle, and I am using a size K crochet hook. We're not using this to crochet, we just need to grab loops of yarn and pull them through each other. So, which loops of yarn are we grabbing? Well, what I need to do is find the top 2 strands of yarn from the back and pull it through this hole up here. Now, the very beginning of this looks fiddly because it is fiddly. It may make you a little bit crazy the first time you do it, and honestly, it doesn't get that much easier, but once you know what you're doing, the rest of it goes really quick once you've kind of got it set up. So what I like to do is kind of just peek through from the front side and see if I can see the strands in the back. That is what works best for me. You may find another method that works better for you, but the gist of it is just to find the top 2 strands from the back. Now, if you're not sure, you obviously can flip it over and see if that's what you are indeed grabbing. The other thing that you can do, if you're not sure if you're grabbing from the front or the back, is, and I do have these, so before I lose them, I'm going to just go ahead and hook them on my hook. But if you're not sure if you're grabbing from the front or the back, it's really easy to just give the yarn a tug And I can see that it must be from the front because I can see those stitches moving, so that's not what I want if I'm looking for strands from the back. If I grab this strand right here, it's not moving in the front, I can see it pulling back here, and this is my second back layer of fabric. So that's one way to check. It won't tell you if it's the actual strands you need, but it'll tell you if it's the front or the back. So I've got the top two most strands from the back. Now I need the top two most strands from the front, which should be easier to find, and they're right here. I need to bring my hook under these, between the top two and the next couple, and then I need the next two strands from the back. And again, I like to have one hand in the front, one hand in the back, helping me find those back strands. And here are my top two back strands. And now all I'm going to do, pull that through, and now I am started, off to the races. So again, I'm going to look for my top two, next two in the front, and they're right here. And then I'm going to use my finger in the back, help me find the next two in the back. So there's one, and I'm not sure if this is in the front or the back. Give it a tug. That's in the front, but that's not. That's my next strand from the back. Pull it through. Again, top two in the front, find my two in the back. Whoop, that one doesn't want to go. There we go. And you're just going to do this all the way down. So I found my next two in the front, and next two in the back, and pull that through. And like I said, as you go, it will kind of sort itself out a little bit more. It gets a little bit easier. You have fewer strands of yarn that are kind of going all over the place and trying to get in your way. And you'll also just get the hang of it and get more comfortable that you know exactly what you're trying to do. So that is the hardest part. Now, I will give you all of the caveats that make this much easier. If you screw this up a little bit and grab the wrong strand of yarn, or you grab 3 strands instead of 2 strands, or 1 strand instead of 2 strands, it's fine. If it bothers you, rip it back and do it again. If it doesn't bother you, keep right on trucking, because you will not notice when you are done. The whole purpose of doing this is to lock the two sides of the fabric together, and if there's a strand or two that is out of place, that got grabbed up in the wrong loop, you will never ever notice it. You just grab it on the next chance you get, and it will be fine, and you will be the only one who ever knows that it's not exactly where it's supposed to be. If you miss one altogether, you are going to want to rip back and start over. Like if you get to the end and realize that you have a strand of yarn that's just kind of hanging out and it's not locked up at all, then it's going to be really loose, and it is going to become a problem. So that you will want to rip back. But the second piece of good news is that once you get going, this goes pretty quick. And if you feel like you screwed it up terribly, there's something wrong, you don't like the way it came out, it will take you no time at all to just drop it back down to the beginning and do it again. And the next time will go even faster, because now you'll know exactly how it is that you want to do it. So once you get the hang of it, it goes pretty quick, and even if you mess something up, it is pretty painless to fix it. It's not a big deal. All right, now we're getting down near the end, and this may be when you discover any number of things. You may discover that you don't have the same number of strands on the front and the back when you get down near the end, or to the end. You may just, for any number of reasons. Usually I screwed something up, but could just be the way that you did the bind off. But if you get down here and you don't have the same number of strands on the front and the back, that's fine too. It is not a problem. So I have 3 strands on which side? On my front. And I have, what do I have left to work with? I only have one strand left to work with on the back. No problem. What I am going to do is go, I could go over all three and bring my one up, my one from the back. For this one, I'm just going to pull one through the middle of those. So I'm just going to go under two like I would normally. And now I've got this one strand that is just free floating, but that's okay because that's all going to get caught up on the other side. So now I've got my last loop that's just hanging out. I'm not going to do anything with that yet. I'm going to put it on my knitting needle with my live stitches for right now to hang out while we do the other side. Okay, so we made it to the other side, and I actually have a perfect example of what I was talking about before, about what to do if you make a mistake, if you miss a strand. Because what I need to do now is grab my top two most strands from what's now the back side, and in doing that, so we've got these nice two loose stitches up here, right? Those are from the back, what's now the back. And, oh, I got this guy here too. And that guy looks nice and loose. Yep, definitely missed getting that one when this side was the back, when we did the other side. So I could go on, flip it over and drop that down and just redo it and get it in where it belongs. But I'm not that worried about it. It's really not a big deal. No one but me is ever going to know that it's in the wrong spot. So I'm going to go ahead and just snag that up here. Now you can go in either direction. I like to go, you could go this way. I like to go in from the bottom like that, because then when I pull this next loop through, it'll twist this topmost stitch, and I think it makes for a neater look. So now I need to find my next set of two strands from the back, what's now the back side. And these are actually really easy, because they'll just be the loose strands that are right on the top. If you're not sure, you can always just give them a tug, but you will pretty quickly figure out how to tell which strands are your top strands. Pull it through, and we're off. All right, again, I've got my two top strands that are nice and loose, pretty easy to see. If you're having any trouble, if you pull it apart a little bit more, it'll get that much easier to see. And again, two strands, pull it through, and if you're not sure, definitely can be helpful to stretch it out a little bit, and you'll see that these two top strands they're just sitting right on the top. So it's really easy to identify which ones you're looking for, because they're the ones that are just loose and hanging out. I got my next two, and all that. Okay, so now down near the end, remember we had the end was a little weird on the other side, so of course the end's going to be a little weird on this side too, and that's okay. You just want to have the two sides locked together with this row of these rows of essentially crochet chain stitches, and it doesn't really matter how the end looks. So I did my last two. Now I have this one bit left from the other side. I'm just going to go ahead and loop that through like that. And if it looks super loose, that's because this is also my live yarn, my working yarn. So that won't be so loosey-goosey once all is said and done. And now I can put that stitch onto my needle. Okay, so we've got all of our seaming is done. I'll show you what it looks like now. And look at how magically all of that messy yarn that was hanging out on both sides is gone. I'll show you on this side. This side that looked so messy around the big stitches before, it's just magically all snugged up, and it looks great.